The shadow of the past. The rain fell in relentless sheets, drumming against the cobblestone streets of Ravenwood. A dim street lamp flickered on the corner, casting long, wavering shadows. Inside a modest, cluttered office, Detective Oscar Blackwood leaned back in his chair, staring at the case file that had haunted him for years. The faded photograph of a young woman stared back at him, her smile frozen in time. Beneath it, a caption read, "Clara Holloway, 1998. Oscar's fingers traced the edge of the photo. Clara had disappeared 2 decades ago, and her case had remained unsolved, buried under layers of bureaucracy and negligence. But now, an anonymous letter had brought it back to life. The letter, typed on aged paper, had only 4 words. Find the missing piece. Oscar's phone buzzed on the desk, jolting him from his thoughts. He answered without looking at the caller ID. "Blackwood," he said, his voice gravelly. "Detective Blackwood, it's Nancy." The voice on the other end was steady but urgent. Nancy Caldwell was a private investigator and an old acquaintance. "I heard you're looking into the Holloway case again." "Word travels fast," Oscar replied, leaning forward. "What do you know about it?" "Not much, but I found something you might want to see. Meet me at the old train station at midnight." Before he could respond, the line went dead. Oscar glanced at his watch. It was nearly 11. He grabbed his trench coat and hat, tucking the letter into his pocket. The night was far from over. The train station was a relic of a bygone era, its grand architecture now crumbling under decades of neglect. Oscar arrived just before midnight, his footsteps echoing in the empty hall. Nancy stood near the ticket booth, her blonde hair tied back and her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. "Oscar," she greeted him with a nod. "Over here." She handed him a file, its contents wrapped in a rubber band. Inside were photographs, old newspaper clippings, and a map of Ravenwood. "What's this?" he asked, flipping through the pages. "A lead," Nancy said. Clara wasn't the only one. 3 other women vanished around the same time, all within a 5-mile radius of the Holloway estate. Oscar studied the map, noting the marked locations. And nobody connected the dots? "It was the late 90s, Nancy replied. "Different times. But here's the kicker. I found a diary belonging to one of the victims." She mentioned a man named Elliot. Oscar's mind raced. "Elliot Holloway, Clara's older brother." Nancy nodded. "He left town shortly after Clara's disappearance. If anyone knows what happened, it's him." Tracking down Elliot Holloway wasn't easy. He had changed his name and moved to a remote cabin in the woods, far from prying eyes. When Oscar and Nancy arrived, the cabin was shrouded in fog, its windows dark. "Stay behind me," Oscar said, drawing his pistol. They knocked, but there was no answer. The door creaked open under Oscar's touch. Inside, the cabin was a chaotic mess of papers, photographs, and strange symbols scrawled on the walls. At the center of it all was Elliot, sitting in a worn armchair, his eyes hollow. "You've come to ask about Clara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Oscar stepped forward. "We need the truth, Elliot. What happened to her?" Elliot's hands trembled as he picked up a faded photograph of Clara. "I tried to protect her," he said. "But there are things you can't fight." "What things?" Nancy pressed. Elliot's gaze darted to the symbols on the walls. "The shadow. It comes for those who dig too deep. It took Clara. It took them all." Nancy exchanged a glance with Oscar. The symbols looked like a mix of ancient runes and gibberish, but there was a disturbing pattern to them. "What does the shadow want?" Oscar asked. Elliot's voice cracked. "To bury the truth. Leave it alone, detective, or it will come for you too." Despite Elliot's warning, Oscar and Nancy continued their investigation. The symbols led them to an abandoned church on the outskirts of Ravenwood. Inside, they found a hidden passageway leading to a network of tunnels. "This must be where the shadow operates," Nancy said, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. As they ventured deeper, they discovered an underground chamber filled with artifacts, jewelry, clothing, and personal items belonging to the missing women. At the center of the chamber was a stone altar, its surface stained with dried blood. "It's a ritual site," Oscar said, his voice grim. "Someone's been using this place for years." Suddenly the air grew cold, and the flashlight flickered. A low, guttural sound echoed through the tunnels, sending chills down their spines. "We're not alone," Nancy whispered, gripping her weapon. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing like embers. The shadow lunged at them, its movements unnaturally fast. Oscar fired his pistol, but the bullets seemed to pass through the creature. "Run!" he shouted, pulling Nancy back toward the entrance. They barely escaped the tunnels, collapsing on the ground outside. The church stood silent and foreboding behind them. Back at the office, Oscar pieced together the evidence. The shadow wasn't a creature, but a manifestation of the guilt and secrets buried in Ravenwood. The town's elite had used the church for occult rituals, sacrificing women to maintain their power. "It's all connected," Nancy said, laying out the files. "Clara must have found out and tried to stop them." Oscar nodded. "And they silenced her." The revelation was bittersweet. They had uncovered the truth, but it came at a cost. The shadow would always linger, a reminder of the darkness that people were capable of. As Oscar stared at Clara's photograph one last time, he vowed to ensure her story would never be forgotten. The past might cast a long shadow, but the light of truth could pierce through even the darkest corners.
The vanishing masterpiece. The rain hammered against the cobblestone streets of London, washing the dim glow of gas lamps into shimmering pools of light. Inside a prestigious art gallery on the edge of Mayfair, chaos reigned. The Venetian Dream, a painting valued at over £20 million, had vanished without a trace. All that remained was an empty frame, its golden edges now a cruel mockery of the artistry they once encased. Detective Linda Hartley stood at the threshold of the gallery, her keen eyes scanning the scene. Her trench coat dripped with rainwater, but she paid no heed. The thrill of a fresh case always quickened her pulse. Beside her stood her trusted partner, Oscar Reed, whose broad shoulders and analytical mind had become indispensable to her over the years. "What do we know so far?" Linda asked, her voice cutting through the murmurs of distressed gallery staff. Oscar adjusted his glasses, pulling out a leather-bound notebook. "The painting was last seen during the private viewing last night. Security footage shows no forced entry, but there's a 3-minute blackout in the recordings. The gallery's alarm system wasn't triggered, and there's no sign of a break-in." Linda's lips pursed. "An inside job, then?" Oscar nodded. "That's the theory, but here's the kicker. The gallery director, Henry Carlyle, received an anonymous note this morning." He handed her a crumpled piece of paper. The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic. "You'll never see the Venetian Dream again. Consider it my masterpiece now." Linda's eyes narrowed. Not just a thief, but a provocateur. She looked at Oscar. "Let's start with the staff. Someone knows more than they're letting on." The interrogations. The gallery's employees were a colorful mix of personalities. There was Emily, the nervous curator who could barely meet Linda's gaze; Marcus, the security guard who prided himself on an impeccable record; and Sophia, the enigmatic art restorer whose aloof demeanor set Linda's instincts on edge. Emily was the first to crack. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed to a minor indiscretion. I've been selling information about upcoming exhibits to a collector, but I swear I had nothing to do with the theft." Marcus bristled at the accusation of incompetence. "I did my rounds as usual. There's no way anyone could have gotten past me." Sophia, however, was a tougher nut to crack. Her responses were measured, her expression inscrutable. "Art has always been vulnerable to human greed," she said with a faint smile. "Perhaps the thief simply loved the painting too much to leave it behind." Linda's instincts prickled. There was something about Sophia's words that felt rehearsed, a clue in the shadows. That evening, Linda and Oscar reviewed the gallery's security footage again. The blackout was indeed suspicious, but something else caught Linda's eye. In the seconds before the cameras went dark, a shadow flitted across the edge of the frame. "Enhance this section," Linda instructed. Oscar complied, zooming in on the image. The shadow resolved into a partial silhouette, a figure in a hooded cloak, carrying a cylindrical object. The shape was unmistakable, a rolled canvas. "Whoever this is, they knew exactly what they were doing," Oscar said. "And they had access to the gallery," Linda added. "Let's dig into Sophia's background. She's too calm for someone who just lost a priceless painting." Uncovering the past. A deeper dive into Sophia's history revealed a surprising connection. 10 years ago, she had been embroiled in a scandal involving forged paintings. Though she was never formally charged, whispers of her involvement had tarnished her reputation. More intriguingly, she had once worked with a notorious art thief known only as the Phantom. Linda's heart raced. Could Sophia be working with the Phantom again? Or was she the mastermind this time? The confrontation. Linda and Oscar confronted Sophia in her studio. The art restorer's calm demeanor faltered as Linda laid out the evidence. "Your connection to the Phantom isn't a coincidence," Linda said. "Tell us where the painting is, and maybe we can cut you a deal." Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. "You think I'm a thief? You're wasting your time." But Linda noticed something. A faint smear of blue paint on Sophia's wrist. The same shade used in the Venetian Dream. "Oscar, check her workspace," Linda ordered. Oscar moved quickly, uncovering a hidden compartment beneath Sophia's workbench. Inside was a tube of paint labeled Custom Venetian Blue, a pigment exclusive to the stolen painting. Sophia's defiance crumbled. "Fine," she spat. "But you'll never catch him." "Who?" Linda pressed. Sophia's lips curled into a bitter smile. "The Phantom. The final chase." The Phantom was a ghost in the world of art crime, a figure of myth and legend. But Sophia's confession provided a crucial lead, a warehouse in the docks where the stolen painting was supposedly hidden. Linda and Oscar approached the location with caution. The air was thick with the scent of salt and oil, and shadows danced menacingly under the flickering streetlights. Inside, the warehouse was a labyrinth of crates and canvases. At its center stood a figure clad in black, the Venetian Dream in hand. "Stop right there," Linda shouted, her gun drawn. The Phantom turned slowly, his face obscured by a mask. "Ah, Detective Hartley, I've heard of you, a worthy adversary at last." "Drop the painting and surrender," Linda commanded. The Phantom laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You'll have to catch me first." He bolted, weaving through the maze of crates. Linda and Oscar pursued, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The chase culminated on a precarious catwalk high above the warehouse floor. "It's over," Linda yelled. The Phantom hesitated, the painting dangling precariously over the edge. "Is it?" he taunted. In a daring move, Linda lunged forward, tackling the Phantom. The painting slipped from his grasp but landed safely on a crate below. The mask came off, revealing a face Linda recognized all too well. An art dealer she had crossed paths with years ago. Justice served. Back at the station, the Venetian Dream was returned to its rightful place, and the Phantom, or rather, Charles Monroe, was in custody. Linda and Oscar shared a rare moment of triumph. "Another masterpiece saved," Oscar said with a grin. Linda nodded, her eyes twinkling with determination. "And another criminal brought to justice. But something tells me this isn't the last we've seen of the Phantom." As they left the station, the rain had finally stopped, and the first rays of dawn painted the sky. For Linda Hartley and Oscar Reed, the case was closed, for now.